I'd love to be a flyer up there where the air is clear.
The chances of the air being clear anywhere near you, Baldric, are 0.
Oh, sir, it would be great swooping and diving.
Baldric, what are you doing?
I'm a Sopwith camel, sir.
Oh, it is a Sopwith camel. Ah, right. I always get confused between the sound of a Sopwith camel and the sound of a malodorous runt wasting everybody's time. Now, if you can do without me in the nursery for a while, I'm going to get some fresh air.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
You're listening to Spin Posh Presents. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Sawinski.
And I am Bartek.
Hello, Bartek. How are you?
Good, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing very well. We're doing, I guess, I don't know, in-between monthly show because we can't do the mystery box because of the world being in disarray. So it's for the time being, we are talking TV shows. We're talking about televisual events, dare I say.
Oh yeah, that's the name you gave the other one, didn't you?
Yep, I figured out a name. I figured a Garth Marenghi's Dark Place reference will do the trick. And yet we haven't talked about Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, a televisual event in itself. No, we talking TV. We don't usually talk TV, but hey, things are all crazy and upside down in the world. So last episode, last month, we talked about Twin Peaks: The Return. This time round, Bartek and I were thinking, hey, you know, we're both big fans of Blackadder, and I think it's time to talk about Blackadder. It's been a little while since we've both actually rewatched it, I do believe, and we were just like, hey, let's watch it again. And you know, it's fun to talk about, and we can just talk about it on the pod. It's a fun time. Am I wrong, Bartek? Is it not a fun time?
Well, that's what we're here to find out.
It's fun until it's sad.
There's a lot of death.
Yeah, so Blackadder, for those listening people, Blackadder who are not in the know or aware, Blackadder was a series from the 80s and eventually into the 90s, I guess. British comedy series. Each season of the show is a self-contained story, a self-contained anthology thing about the different lives of a series of different characters: Edmund Blackadder and Baldric and Lord and Percy and Darling and Melchett and all these different characters. But our main character is Blackadder, and it's just basically putting Rowan Atkinson in different historical periods in each season. So, you know, for instance, the fourth season's World War I, second season's Queen Elizabeth the First, and you have a bunch of specials and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, different relatives, ancestors, descendants of this lineage.
Yeah, and of the other characters' lineages as well. Some of them, Percy just disappears after season 2.
Yep.
So yeah, and it's Blackadder is a classic British sitcom. It's a classic comedy show. I would say if you're into comedy shows and you haven't at least heard of Blackadder, then you're truly missing out, because Blackadder is it's not a cult classic show. It is just a classic show. So, Bartek, what is your history with this historical show set in historical time periods? When did you first see this?
Unlike other things. I first saw it, I'd say I was a teenager when I first saw it. I hadn't actually heard of it outside of me just browsing the internet, basically.
So you found it through online recommendation.
Yeah, I remember... Yeah, somewhere in my teenage years, I discovered that, like, oh, I can use the internet to watch things. And I remember, at one point, I was like, oh, I can watch Mr. Bean. And then through
yeah. I love
watching...
my brain went elsewhere. It's like, when I was a teenager, I discovered I could watch things online, like Mr. Bean. And I'm just thinking, things online when you're a teenager. Yep, Mr. Bean springs to mind.
Yeah, that's what everyone does, right?
Yeah, of course. You can just watch them on YouTube now.
Yeah, I think I did watch it on YouTube. But basically, yeah, I'd watch Mr. Bean, and then in the recommended things, I'd get recommended something called Blackadder. And I'd click on like random Blackadder videos, and because I didn't know what this was, I was a bit confused that like in one video he was like this World War I guy with a mustache, and then he's a pilot, and then the second thing I'd look at is the part from the second episode of the first season where he's like, "I am not a eunuch," and I'm like, "Is this the same show? It says Blackadder." And then eventually I just sorted myself out and went through the whole thing.
Nice. I grew up with Blackadder. I don't remember a time in which Blackadder wasn't in my knowledge. Specifically season 2, I remember watching mainly. We had them recorded on video, and then eventually we got the DVD box set of the series, and then the specials, and I remember him being Mr. Bean, of course, because Mr. Bean is something I also grew up with, but I would say I've watched Blackadder way more in comparison to Mr. Bean. Even as a kid, I think I watched Blackadder more because it stimulated my comedy sensibilities even as a child. I like Mr. Bean, don't get me wrong. Mr. Bean's iconic and great, and he transcends all languages because he's silly and just, silent comedy kind of thing going on. But Blackadder was the intellectual comedy. It was the smart person's comedy, whilst also being gross and silly and violent and, obvious gags and, oh, his name's Darling, ha ha ha, but it always struck me that, hey, this guy, that he's also, like, Rowan Atkinson can do more than be Mr. Bean, which I think most people outside of, like, the UK and Australia and New Zealand, whatever, what I'm saying is Americans... Most Americans, it seems, don't know that he is not just Mr. Bean.
Yeah, because one of the things I did watch for this was the Blackadder back and forth thing.
Yeah.
The video that I ended up watching was literally called, like, Mr. Bean in all caps, and in brackets, like, Blackadder back and forth.
And just to talk about back and forth just for a second, even back and forth was capitalizing on him being Mr. Bean, because the opening credits, he's doing Mr. Bean reenactments in historical periods, not Blackadder.
Yeah.
Like, none of them are...
Noticed.
Not even, like, the first season of Blackadder, not even that version of Blackadder matched any of the things in the opening of Back and Forth's credit sequence. It's like, oh, at the time he was being popular as Mr. Bean, this was before he did the Mr. Bean movie. It's very odd.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rowan Atkinson's one of those guys where if if you're from England, particularly, like, if you're not American, you just know that he is more than just Mr. Bean. He is just a staple of comedy. He does Blackadder, he does Thin Blue Line, his stand-up stuff, his on-stage stuff, he's not the 9 o'clock news, Love Actually, I want to say, or 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Like, he's always in things, and he's always... Johnny English, of course. But he's always more than just Mr. Bean, and for myself, it's very funny when, for instance, there's like videos online, like there's a big one like the like about the physical comedy brilliance of Mr. Bean, but the whole video is just about Rowan Atkinson. Like, it's not about Mr. Bean, it's about Rowan Atkinson, but they just, like, you wouldn't get as many clicks if you don't call it Mr. Bean.
Yeah, I remember one of the big things was when I was looking at Mr. Bean was that I was really interested in Rowan Atkinson. I was checking out a lot of his stuff. So when I branched out from Mr. Bean to like watch his Rowan Atkinson live sketches and Blackadder and eventually the Thin Blue Line, it was just very much a interesting experience. Me using the internet to learn more about something or someone.
Yeah. As long as you don't use Wikipedia as a source material, then it's fine. As a reference, you're not allowed to use it.
That's literally where I learned about Thin Blue Line from, so there we go.
Yeah, Thin Blue Line's amazing. But yeah, with that, you knew Rowan Atkinson till your teen years primarily as Mr. Bean. How was it seeing him be Blackadder how was it? Because it's very different. He's very like I don't know how to describe him, but he's smart. He's cynical. He's more of a he's a different type of character. How did you feel?
Yeah, I wish I could remember my initial experiences a bit more, but I definitely know that I distinctly remember when I was 14, I was just blabbing on about Blackadder to a friend of mine, and I think me not having a filter, I think I pretty much just described every single scene from the 4 seasons that I liked within like one conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely it became a thing of like, wow, I thought this guy was mainly known for Mr. Bean, but this thing I like even more.
And this isn't just a Rowan Atkinson show. The great thing about Blackadder as a whole is you are getting the comedy titans of that time. And let's be honest, still great comedy titans. You're getting Stephen Fry, you're getting Hugh Laurie, you're getting Rick Mayall at points, you're getting, so on and so forth. You're getting all these comedic titans. And then also you're getting serious actors being silly. Because Brian Blessed, Miranda Richardson, and like there's a few others in this show are usually serious performers. They're usually not as comedically leaning as actors, and still some like I've barely ever seen Miranda Richardson be as overtly comedic. I've seen her be far more serious, but as Queenie, she's hilarious. But this show, you get the joy of watching these comedic legends just sparring off against one another. It's this is my end game. Like all these British titans of comedy, like in the 3rd season, one of the Scarlet Pimpernel guys is the guy who plays Percy, but the other one is Nigel Planner, who plays Neil from The Young Ones, which Rick Mayall was in and Ben Elton wrote for. And 4th season, you get Adrian Edmondson as the Red Baron, and him and Rick Mayall, again, from The Young Ones and Bottom, and they were like a comedic duo, so it's great seeing them face off in Blackadder. And that's one of the things that gets me going is you get the big guns of that time in this series, and it's amazing. And then you get like weirdos like Brian Blessed, who's not a comedy actor. He is incredibly funny, but he's not a comedy actor. He's a serious actor, and here he is in the 1st season being, in my honest opinion, the best thing about the 1st season.
He's pretty great.
Before we get into talking about our favorite seasons and our favorite, versions of each character or that kind of thing, what is it about the show's sensibilities really attract you to it, Bartek? Like when you think of Blackadder as a long-lasting property, a long-lasting thing, what is it that really strikes a chord with you about it?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. When I think of Blackadder, I tend to think of just this idea of this lineage that was brought about by this, dumb guy, the first Blackadder.
Yeah.
He was a dumb guy with everything going against him, and yet it somehow kept going, and the new ones, even though they were smarter, they were just, I guess, trying to survive the best that they could, and it just leads to all these interesting things. And even though this first guy had a, very sad end, something did come about from his actions in a way. So it's this weird, almost underlining story in a way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is an interesting thing that draws you to it. And like we said, each season is self-contained, so you can watch any season and not have to worry about the previous seasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are some running gags that you might miss out on, or just like little things, such as the evolution of lines, such as "I have a cunning plan," or little characters like Flashheart and Bobby and all of that. They are things that are continuity, that are added fun, but you can plop into the 4th season and not worry about having seen the other 3. That's
Oh yeah, I think only the second season really makes any reference to a previous season, and that's just like one line in the credits.
yeah. When I think of Blackadder, one of the things that strikes me, other than its obvious brilliant writing, very very slick, very funny. Like it's a show that balances both intellectual humor with lots of history gags and character gags, but also it's one of those shows that does a great job in writing of just anything will be good for a gag. You know what I'm talking about? We've watched movies like that where it's just gag upon gag upon gag, and that's what the whole thing is. And then you have something that's a bit more like intellectually structured comedy, and this does both of those. But what drives me when I think of Blackadder is it's the thing that I love in lots of these comedies, like Catch 22, for instance. It's the people who are in charge, the people with power, are crazy. And the
Yep.
people with little to no power are the ones that are sane, but also then you have people like Baldrick, who has no power, and he's absolutely crazy. Except for in the fourth season, he speaks so much truth, yet he's still crazy.
Yeah,
And
that's another thing about the show. Like every season has this superior character that is antagonistic for the most part, but not always.
yeah, and I think that's one of the things that draws me is it does a brilliant job. Each season is topping itself in that dynamic of having Blackadder be the man of reason and sanity in a world full of crazy people, and it just keeps getting more elaborate and more depressing. Like in the series to begin with, he's a prince, and by the end, he's in the front lines of the trenches. Like that, his power as an individual goes down each season.
Yeah, every season he has some level of power, but the people above him pretty much makes it so that he can't flex that in any way that you'd imagine.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. And I always think about that. I think about, and that's primarily, it comes to the boiling point in season 4 where there's a tragedy element to that. That dynamic of the people who are in charge are mad, and Blackadder's the sane one. But
Yeah, every season ends with a death, but the fourth season, pretty much from the beginning, was always talking about like, oh, we're heading towards death, try to avoid it.
except for the third season, he gets to live.
Yes, but there is still a death at the end of the third season. Just
Oh,
the
yes.
twist is that it's not him.
Or everyone. Usually it's everyone dies.
Yeah,
In
early
the
on, definitely.
First season, second
And-
season,
and
fourth season.
Yeah. Fair enough, yes.
um,
That's most of them, actually.
Do you have a favorite character? Like, out of the main players, do you have a favorite?
It's hard to say. I always think of, the two most consistent ones, Blackadder and Baldrick. I really like them both.
Yeah, I think it's Blackadder. I think he's the thing that I like. He's my favorite character, and usually the main character, and usually the cynical stick in the mud straight man character usually isn't my favorite. But Rowan Atkinson just plays it so well that every time he's on screen, you just can't not look at him, and he is truly amazing. I don't think I have a favorite iteration of Blackadder, like which version of Blackadder. I don't know. I don't have a favorite of those. I have a favorite season. I don't have a favorite version of Blackadder because they're very hard to pick from. Because he's doing different things, as is Baldrick. Baldrick gets dumber. That's the thing. He gets dumber and dumber and dumber. Like,
He was actually kind of the smartest in the first season.
and then by the fourth season, he's carving his own name on a bullet.
But again, speaking a lot of truths.
Speaking a lot of hard truths. And I love Blackadder. I will give a special shout out to Georgie. I love Prince George. he's great. He's mad and wonderful. So Bartek, you ready to talk about our hot takes?
Sure, let's see how this goes.
Your favorite season, I do believe, is season 1.
I am very fond of season
The
1.
hottest of takes. Now, is that still true? Like on this rewatch, was it still your favorite, or did that kind of shift around? Because for me, I always shift around whenever I'm watching it.
I think maybe it still is my favorite. I was very fond of it in the rewatch, and when it was over, there were a lot of things that I was pointing out mentally that I was like, okay, this sort of element is not going to be present for the next 3 seasons. I'm going to miss this, that kind of thing going on.
Yeah, the first season is usually the one that most people agree is the weakest season, including the creators of the show and the actors in the show, and pretty much everyone agrees.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it the one that I think is the best, but it's definitely one I'm very fond of.
I think it's really good still. I really did enjoy it on this rewatch. It's definitely the weakest for me. I would say if you were wanting to watch Blackadder, I would say start out with season 2 or 3, and then check out the others as an introductory course.
Just to get an idea of what the whole thing's like.
As I think season 2 and 3 are like the definers of like if you're going to be into this or not. Because season 1's a little bit rough around the edges, and season 4 I think pays off very nicely if you've watched at least another season of Blackadder to understand the structure. But you can watch the 4th season as well as an introductory thing. Like, they're all great, but I think just the first season, if you're wanting to watch Blackadder, you can watch it from the beginning, but just know that this isn't like the definer of how the rest of the series is going to be, because it is still different.
Yeah, they pick what they liked and they get rid of what they didn't like, basically, going forward.
So what about the first season do you like?
I really like its tone, its setting, and its presentation. So I feel like the rest of the seasons have a very sitcom-y atmosphere. A lot of sets, a lot of fixed camera angles. You don't see particular places. Whereas the first season, it actually really feels like you're at the setting. You've got I think after the opening, you see a sweeping shot of a dining room. You have outdoor scenes. A lot of things like that, and I really enjoyed that about it. It feels the most like you're actually there.
It had a budget. It had a budget. They filmed at castles. They filmed in winter, so you could see the actors freezing to death. They had all the armor. They had the elaborate costumes, and like you said, camera work was a little bit more elaborate in that first season. Although the 4th season did have a very elaborate camera move in which we saw a first-person perspective, which I forgot about.
Yes, that's right.
I agree with all that stuff you just said. I think it is the most visually appealing of the seasons, because you're getting like these historically not necessarily accurate, but close to accurate kind of feel. They're riding actual horses, they're near actual castles, they're on actual fields performing battles, and it is the historical epic out of the 4 seasons for sure when it comes to the budgeting of it and the sets and the costumes and the production design and all that. I totally agree. I love Brian Blessed's uniform, like his armor with the gauntlets on the shoulders, and he's covered in blood and he's screaming. I love that. That's like an image that never leaves my brain. Or when he's playing, like when he's figuring out how he's going to invade different countries, and he's got his map on the floor with the different chess pieces, or like the different pieces, and he's just like this one's like a horsey, and he's just like knocking them over like they're toys.
Yeah. Which also happens in the last episode of the 4th season in a way.
It does. I enjoyed the first season much more in this rewatch. I think it has a lot of merit. I think the biggest weakness, though, is Blackadder himself. You can tell that they didn't know what his character was.
Yeah, because he's meant to be a dumb guy, but he does have these moments of like wit and very reminiscent of future Blackadders where it fits a lot more.
Yeah, he's a little bit too wishy-washy as a central character, and I love Rowan Atkinson, but he's playing it a little too broad for my taste. Like, he's pulling a lot of silly faces. He's doing a lot of physical comedy stuff, which I don't associate Blackadder as being a physical comedy show as strongly as other Rowan Atkinson vehicles. Like, there's physical comedy stuff in there, but usually Rowan Atkinson's not the one doing the physical comedy as much. But in this first season, I think of him constantly groveling and bowing until he's like out of the room and around the corner. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
Or when he is going to be, I can't remember, he's going to be elected as something or other, and he has to lay on the floor in front of the king.
Yeah, in the same way that his brother just did.
Yeah, but more humiliating.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. I think what I like about the first season too is they have grander stories. Like the actual plots of each of the episodes feels historically relevant to what was happening in the kingdom at that time.
Yeah. And you get some context because every episode starts with a narrator.
Yes. Yeah. How did you feel about that? Did you remember the narrator?
I somewhat did, yeah. I really enjoyed having the narrator because the narrator also had a few jokes of his own there.
And he did
and also
physically turn up later.
yeah, and also I don't know the settings that all these shows are set in as well as I think I should, so that definitely helped for me for that season.
That is true. Yeah, that first season has so many grand plots. I think my favorite episode of the first season, comedy-wise, plot-wise, is the witch sniffer episode. The guy who thinks they're witches. I enjoy that episode a lot.
Definitely when I think of like witch trials and stuff, I always jump to that episode where like every single line that someone says is taken completely in the wrong direction. Like you're purposely jumping to a conclusion. It's like, oh, I'm interpreting this as you being a witch. I always think of that.
They even executed the horse.
Yes. He wrote a confession, right?
Oh yeah, of course. I also love that actor who played the witch sniffer. I don't know him from anything else really, but he was great as that character. He was so hammy and silly and over the top.
Yeah. Another thing that the first season has is that not only is the superior character a relative of Blackadder's, but you also get a lot of his family.
Yeah, it is interesting that you get his family in this. We do get some family in the second season, but they're different.
Yes, we do.
Do you have a favorite episode in this first season? One that really strikes a chord?
It's really hard to say. I always think of like, individual scenes. Like I remember in the one where he becomes the archbishop, I remember the scene where Baldric is like showing all the stuff that they're gonna scam people with.
Yeah.
And then in the last episode, it might be the last episode when he's gathering all the evil men in the kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just every episode has like little moments that I like, and of course we have Miriam
Margulies and Jim Broadbent as the comedy duo of a century. I love the Spanish Inferno episode as well. I love that one. It has possibly one of my favorite gags in Blackadder, where he's constantly translating for her at the wedding, and the bishop guy is just so fed up with him because Jim Broadbent is being so annoying with his like character. The way he speaks is so like he's like a muppet. What's he like?
It's like purposely bad accent, but for comedic effect.
Jim Broadbent didn't know he didn't know how to do a Spanish accent, so that was his attempt.
That's great.
I think one of the writers, I can't remember which one, said they've never heard, like it was perfect. I've never heard a person get every syllable in the English language wrong. Like Jim Broadbent. But the bit that cracks me is when the bishop just asks him, like, will you shut up? And he just shouts to the people behind him, Silencio! Like, he's translating it.
It was definitely a few watches in of that episode that I noticed that like every single line he says is a translation. Like he doesn't have lines of his own.
Yes. Isn't that amazing?
that took me a long time to realize, and it made it all the better.
The what's he like in bed?
In bed.
And we're going to talk about Miriam. She's amazing. She gets to appear more. I'm heartbroken still that Jim Broadbent didn't get to appear in season 2. He was busy, but she's amazing. I've turned you on to her over the last year or two as a personality. She's hilarious. And do you prefer her as the Spanish Infanta, White Adder, or Queen Victoria?
I think I'm a White Adder guy.
I think I'm a White Adder guy too. And with Jim Broadbent, I prefer him as Prince Albert, but I don't know. Silencia will always be in there.
I feel like I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like maybe that "what's he like in bed" line must have influenced me in some way. I don't know how though.
In bed, probably.
In bed.
In bed.
Yes. And that scene also has the great logic of you're asking that question to the mother of the person in question.
I think on this rewatch, a character that I found very interesting and very compelling. I always find Brian Blessed amazing because he's the obvious one, but I found Harry really interesting on the rewatch. I thought Harry was a fascinating character, and the performance was really good because he could have went one way or the other. He could have been completely oblivious and pompous and unaware of what a sniveling arsehole he is, or he could have been more adversarial, and he just finds that perfect middle ground because when he screws over Edmund or when he's a dick to Edmund, you feel like he's not doing it out of malice, but sometimes he is, and I felt that the actor did a really good job as Harry. He was someone I found very, very interesting on this rewatch.
Yeah, I've always liked Harry. I always thought he was very funny.
But we got Brian Blessed to distract us. Oh my god. Brian Blessed, how he was not in more Blackadder will always haunt me.
Yeah.
Because each season you read a piece of trivia about how Brian Blessed was going to be in it somehow, and then it just didn't work out.
Oh, I didn't read any of that trivia.
He was going to. He wanted to, apparently, according to trivia, wanted to play Queen Elizabeth with the beard. I don't know if that's true because I have personally
He could have
listened
played
to.
Nursey.
He should have played no. He should have played Redbeard.
He should have.
Tom Baker was great though. And apparently in the back and forth, it was supposed to go back to the first season, but they couldn't do it because Brian Blessed got booked up, so they had to change it to Waterloo. It's a shame. It's a bloody shame. I don't know if that's necessarily true because I have listened to Brian Blessed's autobiography, and he talks about his experience with Blackadder being a really fun experience, but he felt very unnatural and uncomfortable because he's not a comedy actor. Although we all find him very hilarious because he's very loud and brash and over the top, and he's a great panel guest and a great speaker, and he's fun in Blackadder. It does make sense when you look over his career. Comedy is not the thing he does, so Blackadder is to him a rarity in his career. It's an oddity. It's something that he enjoyed doing, but it wasn't a strength of his that he was familiar with. It's like Bartek and I, we've both done acting, and we both know internally what our strengths and weaknesses are as performers, or what we like to lean towards and stuff that we haven't lent towards. And I understand that with Brian Blessed. It is astonishing though, because you see him in Blackadder and you just think, oh, he's amazing. I can't wait to watch him in every other comedy thing. But really, he doesn't have that much.
Yeah, true. There are, compared to a lot of the other superiors in the show, there's a lot of episodes where he's in the background. Like, there's one episode where he's sick and you only see him like 2 or 3 times.
But they're amazing. They
are amazing.
I always think of him drenched in blood and how he made a bridge out of dead bodies with people he stabbed to death with a fruit knife or whatever it was. Amazing. He does have my top 5 quotes in Blackadder, where of course he's always forgetting Edmund's name, and then who's that? Your other son. Oh yes, of course, the slimy one. That is a define. When I think of how to describe Edmund Blackadder as a character in all the seasons, that's a line that immediately pops to my head. Oh yes, the slimy one. I want to give a shout out to one character that I think, Bartek, you like a lot, and we haven't brought it up, but do you like the messenger guy in the first season?
Yes.
Because I loved him.
Yes, I do. Yes.
What?
He should have come back.
What is that about? I just love it. It's so silly that he just mimics their physicality to the point in which they try and push him, he pushes them.
And Harry uncharacteristically hates him.
He hates poor people. It's not just him. He hates all poor people. Like, he hates all servants. But we see it primarily with the messenger guy.
Gets really loud and angry with him.
Anything else you want to mention about that first season? Oh, can we mention the theme song? I think it's the best theme song.
Yes.
It's really epic.
Absolutely. Yep.
Although I do like the second season theme song. Can I just tell you, my sister had as her ringtone the second season's theme tune, and she always thought it was the first season. And my wife told her, no, that's season 2 of Blackadder. And my sister was...
Blackadder 2.
My sister was like, what? And since then, she remedied that and changed it to the first season. So now...
Because she didn't know the first season?
She just forgot, because they're all very similar. They're done in different time periods. Like, the first season's one very epic or grand sweeping, but basically when you break them down, they all have a similar... You know the Blackadder theme, it's just they have different...
Yeah,
sounds.
it's the same tune, but like different instruments and sometimes vocals and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but my sister just forgot. So, and then
yeah, but like, what's the logic of changing the ringtone? Like, she specifically wanted the first.
Yeah, she was like, "Well, I'm changing to the first season."
Okay.
That's just how the brain works. Anything else you want to mention about the first season and what really makes it special for you?
I guess I'll ask, what did you think of the first Baldric compared to the rest of the Baldrics?
I find him less interesting, honestly. I think it's a conflicting thing because Blackadder is also smart at points, and Baldric is smart, and it feels like you have one or the other. Well, Percy is Percy. He's stupid no matter what.
He's pretty consistent between the two seasons he appears in.
Ah, Percy. Which Percy do you prefer?
I think maybe the second one. I think, yeah, the first one, because we have such a dumb Edmund, the fact that you have to have Edmund jump between, being dumb and also, like, being snarky, it kind of contrasts a bit more. So I think maybe the second one due to Edmund.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. I prefer second season one as well. Just because he, not only for what you just said, but also invents the purest form of green.
Although I do like one of his first lines in the first season where he's like, well, we could if we want to like, we're not gonna lose.
The first season, a lot more interesting than people do give it credit for, including myself. I agree, it has grand sweeping vistas, it has leans far more into Shakespeare stuff as well. Each series has some reference to Shakespeare involved, but the first season, heavily so. Which, it can be great, can be annoying. I personally found it great. I thought it was very fun. I like the witches. They were fun in that one episode.
Yeah.
I also like the fact that the first season played with absurdity more. Like, random absurdity. Each season has absurdism in it, for sure. To the point in which, on the rewatch, I was surprised by how much it was prevalent throughout each season. But the first season has so many absurd things, like the court case, like the witch trial, in which they just jump in the air, and then it cuts to a different room, and they've just jumped in there. Like, how did they do that? And they're just like, all right, I'm glad that worked.
And that plan was hyped up.
Yeah, it was really hyped up, and I'm like, I'm glad that worked.
We'll be fine.
Like, how did that work?
And then they fuck up anyway.
Also, first season does have an iconic line of dialogue, which is, "Morning, Doncaster!"
I really love the story you told about your dad with that line.
So, my parents, big fans, of course. We, at one point or another, went to medieval fairs. Is that what they're called? I can't.
I've heard the term medieval fair, yeah.
That kind of thing, medieval dress-up things. And there was a guy there who was dressed in a very poncy outfit. And my father walked past him and said, "Morning, Doncaster!" And, of course, they knew what that was a reference to, and so did everyone. And it just became a thing that guy was called Doncaster for the rest of the day. A true legendary moment.
I love that story.
Season 2 of Blackadder is where Blackadder really begins. No, I'm of course being facetious. I think it's... my thing is, I don't know what my favorite season is in between season 2 and season 4. And
yeah.
even on this watch, I can't tell you. I think maybe season 2, because I think every episode has the perfect lines. All of the lines are perfect. While season 4, it's hard to say, but I think it's just because it has a more melancholy tone. Season 2 feels like a warm blanket over you in the cold. It's familiar, it's nostalgic. I think it's because season 2's the nicest season. I don't know if you feel that way. Like, it feels like although the characters that are in charge and have power are adversarial, it still feels like they're friendly. You know, they all give each other nicknames, like Queenie and Blackie and Melchie and Nursey, and you know what I'm talking about, Bartek?
Yeah, I do.
To me, I think that's one of the appeals of the second season is it feels like they're a family. The cast of characters, like, yeah, they're making fun of each other, and yeah, one of them's threatening to kill the others, but it feels more wholesome. It feels warmer and cuddlier, and Blackadder is so cynical at the heart of it, but he genuinely likes Queen Elizabeth. That's what I got struck with.
Yeah, there were times where I was wondering, like, oh, does he, doesn't he? But then in the end, I think he did like her.
Life without you would be like a broken pencil. Absolutely pointless. Pointless. I think that's a part of what I love about the second season is it is just such a comfortable, nice world to live in. I want to be in those sets. Like, I want to be in the Queenie set, that small, tiny room that they live in.
Very tiny room.
Very, very tiny. But it's amazing. And Miranda Richardson as Queenie is possibly one of the greatest comedic performances of all time. I'm just saying it. And Blackadder as a show is filled with many statements like that. General Melchor in season 4 is one of the greatest comedic performances of all time, and so is Queenie. And I think just, like I said, season 2, season 4, I toss up between them both, but for now I'm locking in season 2 as my favorite, and primarily because the first episode, Bells, is my favorite episode of Blackadder entirely. None of the other episodes even come close to this episode for me. What do you think about this second season, Bartek? Give me your thoughts, your views.
Yeah, you can tell that they really loved Queenie because she was in both the specials, Christmas and Back and Forth.
And deservedly so. They love Nursey too, by that logic.
They do.
I wish she was in other Blackadders. Like, I wish that actress got to appear outside of just being Nursey. I would have liked to have seen her again.
Yeah, I feel like you could fit her in. They're female characters all the time. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the first season's my favorite, but I already said it's not the best one, but definitely 2 and 4 are the ones that like toss up between the best because they're good in different ways. Definitely, I was very fond of revisiting season 2, especially since I had that whole thing of like, season 1's over, all these things I like aren't gonna be here, but it was cozy and inviting to come back to. And definitely, the comedy was really good.
It feels like to me, and this is a bias, but it feels like every comedic decision in season 2 is perfect, down to each individual ending credit with the little guy singing in that very annoying voice.
Yeah.
And eventually he gets chased away.
Yeah, Blackadder gets pissed off with him as it goes on.
Yeah, that is such a fine touch. I think the first season 2 had like individualized songs at the end of each credit, but
the first season had a different song at the last episode, but for the most part it was the same song. The second season had a different song at the end of every episode.
Okay. For some reason I thought they played around with the credits in the first season. Like, some of them sometimes like had the character names were made different depending on the episode.
Yeah, that's right. The credits themselves were always like in order of like religiousness and stuff
or
like
cutie
that.
Or something or other, something silly.
So like in some episodes, Rowan Atkins will be listed first, but in others he'd be listed last because he's like the least religious character.
Yeah, the second season...
that was something I forgot about.
Yeah, the second season just... I don't know, I don't think there's a misstep here. I think every joke lands. I think every episode is perfect. The first episode, Bells, though, I think is the standout, and I think that's the episode you should show people to let them know what the show's about. Like, that is the definer for me. It has the wise woman, Bartek.
The wise woman, the wise woman.
Because she is wise. And she is a woman? Oh, you know her then.
A woman?
And...
Just a stab in the dark, which is what you'll be getting.
And Rowan Atkinson with a beard is something I've never known that I needed before, but boy is he sexy in season 2. I think he's pure sex appeal in season 2.
Yeah, him and facial hair, like 2 and 4.
Who would have guessed, huh? Because we're used to Rowan Atkinson being silly face guy. Like, you know, we've seen now the internet adopt Rowan Atkinson to meme status because of his silly face. But he's sexy in season 2. The hair, the outfit. I think that's my favorite Blackadder look is season 2. He just looks like a badass. Like, he looks like someone you wouldn't want to fuck with. Do you have a favorite episode in season 2?
Favorite episode? I think I have to give it to the White Adder one.
It's a very amusing shape. It's a turnip in the shape of a thingy. Which is funny, because my thingy's in the shape of a turnip. I love the White Adders. I have Miriam Margolyes as a White Adder on my wall on a canvas. Her looking at the turnip shaped like a thingy with excitement.
Yeah, the second happiest she is in that episode.
Every line she says in that episode is gold.
Mm-hmm.
Everything she does in that episode is gold. The burning of the Catholics line to keep us warm is a highlight for sure. I've
definitely heard you say that one a million times.
And you have to say it like how she does. Catholics.
Yes. Catholics.
Not just Catholics. Catholics. Wicked child!
You have to actually say the O. Wicked child!
We only have one spike. So I sit on Nathaniel.
What was the follow-up? 2 would be a luxury.
2 would be a luxury. Yeah. I love Queenie in that episode. Again, Miranda Richardson is spectacular. She has so many... I can't imagine what it would be like if they didn't characterize her as if she was a small child. I don't know how this show would have sustained itself, because Queenie being like a 7-year-old girl, but she's an adult woman, is one of the best comedic decisions ever. Because it makes her a genuine threat because she's unpredictable. But also you feel for her at times. Like, you're like, aww.
Yeah, she actually kind of shows her logic in a lot of ways. Like, her whole thing in that is that she's going to sneak into the party. And she explains her thought process to, I think it was Nursey.
Yeah.
You're like, and you understand exactly what she's trying to do, and you see exactly where it goes wrong, and you see exactly how she responds to it.
And her response is the Queenie, like when you show like the highlight reels of the characters, that's the big one for Queenie, where she's,
when she's addressing the camera.
I may have the body of a frail woman, but I have the heart of a concrete elephant.
I like it when she says, certainly will.
Certainly will. She's true gold. That episode has so many great lines, like the whole great booze up explanation is pure gold. I love when he has that line, and this is something that's great about Blackadder as a whole. Each season you have a specific line or monologue from Blackadder that encapsulates that character, and in season 2 I think it's the moment in which he's explaining why he's wearing a hat and has a feather up his bottom and all that, in which he's like, I'm a very complex man. Sometimes I choose to be nice, and other times I can be very nasty. Just like, yep, that's his character, because Season 2, Blackadder has enough power to get by, but he wants more. And he's an asshole in Season 2. In Season 2, the plots that happen to him are his own fault as well. Like in Season 4, they're not his fault. That's like the fault of the world around him. But in Season 2, he owes that Bishop of Bath and Wells money. and he doesn't give a shit because he's a rich ponce. But you still like him because Rowan Atkinson is nailing this performance, and he's nailing that the cynic observationalist in the room very well. Season 2, quite perfect. We got to talk about Flash though. We got to talk about Flash art. Okay, so in our episode on Drop Dead Fred, you kind of talked about how you weren't really familiar with Rick Mayall outside of this, really, outside of Blackadder, yeah?
Yes, that's absolutely true.
So, I mean, he rocks up in season 1 as Mad Gerald, which is always a highlight, and he's even credited as Mad Gerald. He doesn't even get a credit as
Mad Gerald as himself.
When he rocks up as Flashheart, what's it like for you? Because it's very different for people who were there at the time who know Rick Mayall. What's it like for you? Because in the show, you literally hear the audience cheer when he comes on screen.
Yeah, it's a very glorious moment. Very funny, and the way that he delivers it, like, if you were to just put down the episode summary, like full summary on paper, you might say that, you know, the episode ends really abruptly with the introduction of this character. He takes away the love interest that has been established throughout the entire thing. Bob. Genuine love from both ends. This character comes in, says a bunch of, like, you know, selfish things, goes away, episode ends. You might say, oh, that's weird writing. But the delivery is what delivers it, basically.
Because when you know the behind the scenes, it's even more fascinating, because Rick Mayall performed it differently in rehearsals. He decided what his outfit would look like, so he has like seashells in his hair, and and he's got this mustache that's falling off his face, and he's got this extravagant outfit. But he played it differently in the rehearsals. He played it a lot more like dashing gentleman. But on the fucking day, he rocks up, and you can see each one of those fellow actors nearly laughing or like having to contain themselves because Rick Mayall has just come onto the set and he's just like ripping it a new asshole. He's just like going crazy for it. And he had like a stipulation in which he said like, all right, I'll come onto your silly little show, because he was very much like on purposely, his comedic shtick was like over the top confidence and arrogance. He was very much like, but you need to write me all the best lines. I want my lines to be better than anything Rowan Atkinson gets in this scene and for the rest of the series. And he does have the best lines. I will be honest. I quote those lines a lot. Nursey, I like 'em firm and fruity.
Down boy down.
Down boy down. Yeah, did somebody put a canoe in my pocket? Or yeah, I love that. Or Melchett, still worshipping God? Last time I heard, he was worshipping me. He is a comedic juggernaut, or the classic, she has the tongue like an electric eel and she likes the taste of a man's tonsils.
I was going to say, with the season 2 Lord Flashheart, it's such a brief scene and it's so memorable that in a way it almost felt overly familiar to me. Like, I didn't laugh as hard this time, so it was kind of like, oh yeah, I remember all these lines, I remember this entire scene. So yeah. I kind of gravitated more towards everything else, but definitely, you know, the delivery still was held up.
And that's the thing what I mean with these are two comedic titans of that time. You have Rick Mayall and Rowan Atkinson facing off. Of course, they apparently had like a comedic rivalry because they are two extremely different styles of comedy. Rick Mayall is loud, over the top. He's a physical comedy guy, and like, here's how I describe it. Rowan Atkinson is a Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin type. Intellectual, very smart, but he knows how to play goofy. And Rick Mayall is the Three Stooges. He's violent, he's silly, he's brash, he's loud. Both of them serve their function in the world of comedy very well. I lean towards Rick Mayall because I don't know, I've grown up with him, I love him, he's a comedic idol. But it is an exciting thing of where you get to see these two comedic titans face off against each other using both of their respective forms of comedy, because Rick Mayall's being loud, he has all these great lines, But Rowan Atkinson can just end the scene with just a raising of the eyebrow or just like a pithy one-liner or something. And that is the brilliance of having those two in the same room in scenes, because it is watching two vastly different styles of comedy facing off against one another and it gelling perfectly. And that gets more so in season 4, because in season 4 he's in a whole episode, Flash, not just the end of an episode. Yep. I love Flash and I love Rick Mail, and like I said, for someone like myself and people at the time, Rick Mail, comedic icon, genius, big guy. Hence when he comes on, he just looks at the camera and says, "Yeah, it's me." Because it's like, yeah, it's Rick Mail. He's finally here. And you hear the crowd, you hear the audience cheer as soon as they see him. Not just because he's Flash Heart, but because, oh, it's Rick Mail. He's here. He was the people's poet. And for someone like myself, that's also one of the joys of the second season is you get Stephen Fry, you get Hugh Laurie later on, you get Flash Heart, you get these great characters and these great actors all in the same room. I really appreciated it in watching season 2, Stephen Fry as Lord Melchett, because I always think of him in season 4. In season 4, he's far superior, but season 2, he really is nailing it. He's so snivelly and pathetic.
Yeah. Well, in season 4, he literally is the superior character.
Yes, but in season 2, he does have the Queen's ear more so than Blackadder does.
And yeah, he also has that element of, like, does he like her, or is he just, like, brown-nosing her?
And he's a bigger drinker than Edmund, because when Edmund gets pissed up, he sings the little song about the goblin. Do you want to hear about this goblin or not?
This bloody goblin or not?
I love season 2. I could go on about it all day. We have so many iconic lines, just even from the first episode, like, I'd rather be a quack than a ducky, good day, or my apologies.
Hugh Laurie, yes, the introduction of Hugh Laurie.
Yeah, he was introduced in the White Adders episode as well. That was when he was properly introduced as the guy who's like, oh, hi, bum! That sounds like bum. Before we get on to Hugh Laurie, let's talk about Percy as a character, because this is when Percy leaves the show. We understand why. The actor does come back, because he didn't want to get typecasted as the dumb guy comedy role, because, you know, Tim McIlhenny he's a great actor. Like, he's not just a comedy guy. I've seen him act in many other things. And Percy is a weird character in his list of roles, because it is the one that is different. It is a sillier role. He plays more snivelly kind of characters like Darling or other characters. But let's talk about Percy. Do you miss Percy? Like, after season 2's gone and done and he's no longer in the show, did you miss that void that Percy left?
I think I missed him in season 3 a little bit. But in season 4, I was happy that you know he the actor was there, and we had Hugh Laurie sort of filling in the shoes a bit better than he did in season 3.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about season 3. We'll talk about that, I guess, Mr. Anti-Hugh Laurie. But yeah, I like Percy a lot, and I do miss his presence as Percy. I think Percy had such a breathy idiocy to him. Just he feels like, oh yeah, I'm an idiot, and I'm just dancing on the wind of idiocy. He's just so pathetic and dumb, and I do love when he invents the purest form of green.
Yeah, his idiocy tries to come across a lot more poignant than, like, Baldric's idiocy. Where he's like, look how clever I am as Baldric, but then he's like, I am brilliant.
And there's something interesting to Edmund having a friend as well, because Baldric's not his friend, he's his servant. But Percy's his friend. Like, that's always an interesting thing, is Blackadder has a friend. That's, like... Yeah,
fellow lord.
Season 1 and 2, it isn't because of the circumstances that they're friends. They just are friends or colleagues. And in season 3 and 4, Blackadder with George or whatever, they're not friends. They're just either season 4, they're lumped in together into a trench, or season 3, it's superior, it's the king, or it's the prince, it's the regent. And it's interesting the dynamic of how he does have a friend and how he just disregards it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You do have the hands of a woman, my lord. Oh, Redbeard. Season 2 just has so many characters like that. The iconic one-episode characters that you still think about to this day.
Yeah, every episode has one at least.
Anything else you want to say about Season 2?
Season 2, I think definitely what you were saying about it being the comedy season, the best comedy, I think that is very true.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Season 3. We've been not saying much about Season 3. I think Season 3 is still very fucking good. I just have a preference for Season 2 and Season 4. But Season 3, to me, was always the one that it felt like people I knew or people who talked about Blackadder online or people who talk about Blackadder often would point to Season 3 being like the Blackadder season. I don't see, like, I still see that kind of rumbling today. That's the thing that's great about Blackadder is that you can debate which season's the best, and the answer is all of them are the best. But what do you feel about Season 3?
I like it, but I think it's definitely my least favorite one.
And why is that?
It just doesn't really gel with me for some reason. I'm not really sure what it is. I don't know, I feel like maybe the tone, maybe I'm not as into the Blackadder incarnation or the superior incarnation, just something about it just doesn't quite work with me. I definitely remember, like, moments and characters, like we have Robbie Coltrane, I remember that entire episode being great.
Sausage!
Sausage! Sausage! Oh. Yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm just not into the locations or the period, but it's just something about it just doesn't work with me. I think definitely it's my least... Is it my least favorite Edmund? But I don't know.
Yeah.
Something about it just doesn't work for me as well.
I like Season 3 a lot. I think one of the things that may be the thing that may be giving you a negative feeling towards it that I at least picked up on this watching of it is this version of Edmund is far... He's very cynical, as are all of them, but he's very cold-heartedly cynical. Season 2, he was like a mean motherfucker, but he was also like, he genuinely liked the Queen. At the end of Season 3, when George dies, he does not give a single shit about him being dead.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like mean-spiritedness in my British comedy, and I think that's what I like about Season 3 is George is insufferably, annoyingly British, madcap, silly. I love George, but, you know, I agree with Edmund's disdain for him. Well, Season 2, you just can't help but like Queenie. You know, she's so nice. Yeah, she's not nice, but she's so childlike and silly, and you know she cancels Christmas in one of the specials, and George, he's very silly, but also like he's very loud and brash, and he hates poor people, and he's sexist, and that's all like in tune with the times and the character. But Edmund is very, 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 very cynical and very dry, and that may be one of the turn-offs for yourself or for others.
Yeah, probably the dryness, also mixed with the fact that the superior character isn't as, I guess, mean-spirited. The mean-spiritedness maybe is in the wrong place.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Season 3 a lot. I like that he's a butler. It makes sense. I think him as a butler/advisor is the perfect kind of role. I also like the fact that in Season 3, the antagonistic character or the superior character, as you've referred them, is much more present. Blackadder lives downstairs from him. He lives in the same area. Well, in Season 2, he would have to run off to go see Queenie, and Queenie was always elsewhere. Season 3, George is always there. He's always present. He's always like, you hear the bell ring and you have to go see George.
Yeah, Blackadder's always within Belle's earshot.
Until he gets captured in the Scarlet Pimpernel episode. I think I appreciate that George is more ever present as a character. That is also one of the unusual things when you think about it. The other superior characters or the antagonistic characters aren't as ever present as in the third season. Like first
Brian
season.
Blessed's
Go on.
Yeah, Brian Blessed's either at the castle or he's out somewhere else in the battle.
Yeah, and Harry's kind of in and out, and but in this third season, George is always there, and he's a nice guy. Like he's a nice guy. Like he's just a silly rich guy idiot. But
Mm-hmm. And a lot of good gags are made with that.
oh my god, I love the I don't know what my favorite episode in season 3 is. I agree, it's not my favorite either, but I think it's a damn fine piece of television. I like the Scarlet Pimpernel episode. I think that one has an interesting plot as well. Like I like how the twists and turns of it are. I like this idea that the Scarlet Pimpernel isn't just one person.
I love the process of the death pill, the suicide pill.
Yes. Miranda Richardson coming back as the what was it, the Shadow? The bounce.
Yeah.
The Highwayman was really good. That episode, I like her alternating between like the dumb rich, like the dumb, Duchess or whatever she was supposed to be, with the mind of an idiot, with a cute little nose. I love that that's a running thing with her, is that she has a thing about how cute her little nose is in each iteration
true.
as a character. Because I guess Miranda Richardson has a cute little nose, and we got to know about it.
Yes, that's how you know about things.
I don't know. I think season 3 is very good. I think, Scarlet Pimpernel one, although the one with the actors is very good too.
Yeah, I know. Definitely, our friend Reese. I think I got him into Blackadder in the season that I don't know if he started with season 3, but it's the one that I've heard him mention the most. I think he's very fond of that one.
George. I don't know. I think it's hard too, because I think, oh, but the episode where they make Lord Baldrick with Pitt the younger, and then it's like Pitt the even younger, Pitt, the twinkle in the milkman's eye.
I like the first 2 episodes of season 3 a lot. Yeah.
He accidentally yet brutally stabbed himself. Oh, that's great.
There's also that whole scene with like the voting and the results and stuff. Like, yeah, there's just a lot of funny things in that scene.
The standing at the back dressed stupidly acting stupid party.
Was it acting stupid or looking stupid?
Looking stupid, you're right.
Yeah.
That guy was great. I loved him. I love that he threw in genuinely good reforms in there. Like, just for a bit of a laugh. Yeah, season 3, there's it's just a very good series. I think it does a good job of doing plots very well. Like you have the like I said, Scarlet Pimpernel one, you have the politics one, you have the one where with the Shadow, you have the final one. I don't know, I think the individual episode plots are very well, but I think in comparison to season 2, it's a little bit colder and it's not as gags. Yet again, season 4 is even more depressing. So I don't know, but season 4 has lots of gags, lots of zany, all over the place gags. Well, season 3, it seems like the gag is primarily Blackadder is very cold and cynical about his stupid boss, and that's kind of it. Like season 2, you had all these wacky little characters like the Ploppies.
Yep.
Season 3, you don't have as many wacky other characters. You finally get Miss Miggins. And she's fine. She doesn't really have any gags, though, that really stick with you.
Yeah, she's just like, I guess, responding to the fad of the time.
Like, you have Robbie Coltrane. His character's fun, but he doesn't really have many gags. He's not a comedy character. He's just a genuine antagonist character. Like, he has some funny things. Like, he hates poor people as well. And I think a part of it is we both like Robbie Coltrane a lot. So that's also a thing that we appreciate about that. But I don't think the season 3 has as many funny little characters. Although I do like Miranda Richardson's dad, who wants to, who keeps misinterpreting each sentence is said to them and thinks it's about himself. You remember that character?
Was that the couple? Was it the one in the carriage?
No,
Or was that a
no,
different
that's
father's daughter?
yeah, Miranda Richardson's dad, and how he when he's like, I want to offer you your hand in marriage or whatever. It's like, you bloody well can't. I'm a widow. Like, he's thinking about himself. He was a fun character, and he appears in the Christmas special with his fat orphan children singing Piggy Wiggy
Oh,
Wiggy
yes.
Woo.
Right, yes.
Oh, I don't think that was him actually. No. Different actor, I think.
Oh, no?
But he appeared in the Cavalier
no.
Years as Oliver Cromwell. Yeah, season 3 is very good. I think it has lots of zany, wacky stuff in there. Like, I love Miranda Richardson's shooting squirrels because of their little squeaky noses and that sound they make. And every time she shoots them, you hear the weird sound that they make and a thud.
Yeah, I don't hate the third season, but I just have to put it, something has to be my least favorite.
What do you think about the ending of it, though? Because this is the one where he wins. This is where Edmund wins.
Mm-hmm.
He gets to live and he gets to have power. He will become the king eventually. This is something we should mention too. Each season is set in an alternative universe, in an alternate history of the actual world.
Mm-hmm.
Because first season is if this family kept going and the Tudors didn't immediately take over or whatever. Second season, obviously, Queen Elizabeth and all that dies and gets replaced with an evil German guy. Third season is if Blackadder became Prince George, and later on, I guess, King George or Regent George or whatever, the fourth.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the fourth season isn't alternative history, that's just history.
The fourth season is Rowan Atkinson was at World War One.
And he must have, in his character, by the logic of the timeline, must have been 55 years old because of previous battles he had fought in, but he's clearly not that old. And if he was, he wouldn't be on the front lines.
And he saved Field Master Haig.
Field Marshal Haig.
Oh, was it yes, Field Marshal.
I would like it if he was Field Master Haig. I'm the master of the field. Anything else you want to say? Like, so with that final episode, Stephen Fry rocks up again, and he was great.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Yes.
mean, and he wanted to fight with cannons.
Yeah, I'd forgotten a lot of details about that last episode and the season in general, so definitely seeing that last episode, it felt somewhat fresh to me, so I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like, I think it's cold, a little bit colder. I think it's also because we know how it ends with, like, he just does not give a shit about George as a character. Like, he just does. He is a servant to George. That's it. Like, they're not friends.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least they're friendly, but I don't think they're genuine friends. Like, he does not try to save him very much at all. Like, all right, fourth season, Bartek. What is it about the fourth season? What is it about the fourth season that is so well loved to you, and do you think to others? Because I often hear the fourth season be brought up as the big season as well, that people love. What is it about it that works for you, and what do you think just works about it as a whole?
I guess it has a lot of black comedy, especially compared to the rest, and I think a big element is also that it's a lot closer to our history, our present. Yeah, the pretty much from the very first episode, the setting is fully established. Like, we're in the trenches of the Western Front, we're up against Germany, and we have idiots in charge. Like, what's that phrase? Like, what was it? It's like someone leading lions. Like,
yeah, I
cows
can't
leading
remember.
lions?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah.
Yeah. Basically, not very intelligent people who are not risking their lives, being in charge of the actually brave people who they are just basically sacrificing, because the whole plan is to just leave the trench, march slowly to the Germans, and get shot down. And it's very, it's a very absurd thing. A lot of the jokes are made about it, but it's also something that happened in history.
Yeah, I think there's several factors, like you've just mentioned. I think it being closest to our history is really important because at the time, it was kind of like, oh, I don't know if you should be making jokes about this, because there were still people who were alive that fought and people whose relatives died in that war, and it was very close to home. And then by the final episode, it's like, one of those things where it's taught in schools for World War One. Like, he is Blackadder season 4. Like, that's how great this season is.
Yeah. At the time when it was released, it was like 72 years in the past, but now it's over a century, so that's how time flies.
And there's just, like you said, World War One in the 20th century is the most feudal thing that happened. You know, like World War Two, you understand why that happened, why that needed to be necessary. World War One, it's Blackadder describes it perfectly in the final episode where Baldric asks him why did the war start, and it's just because they thought peace would work by having armies, but people are idiots and monsters and all of that and terrible and like fighting.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of contrast going on.
And there's a relatability to it, because in the other seasons when Blackadder dies, it's a joke when he dies, or as much as Blackadder is a relatable character himself, he's always othered to us, the audience, because of what time period he's in and what position of power he's in. In this, he's just a normal guy. Yeah, he's in the military, but he's just a normal guy. He isn't some lord, he isn't some butler to the king or future king. He's just another guy, and he's going to die. And that's the same with the other characters. You know that they're going to die because of how the show works, because of previous seasons, and because of the circumstance of the show, of the war. And I think it makes it entirely more relatable because there's a ticking time clock element of danger over our characters' heads. But also, like I said, we empathize with our characters more because they're more relatable to us. Not only because they're closer to our time, but because they're just normal guys. They're just normal people that are in this absurd situation. Yeah, Baldric's crazy and odd and silly, but that specific Baldric has really struck a chord with British people. He's a symbol, and like we said, he speaks a lot more truths and reasoning and all of that. And then you have characters like General Melchett, who is the image that one has really of what the people running the war are like. When you think of World War One generals, that's who you think of. You think of Melchett.
There are a lot of gags in this season about how I'm behind you, and then Blackadder points out how many miles behind them he is,
and just the look and the attitude. And I think that's what works about season 4, is just there is a supreme amount of melancholy to the whole affair, but it's much more personal because of what time period it's set in. But also, like I said, we relate to those guys more. Even Darling, I got to be honest, every time that I watch the final episode and Darling gets put on the front line, I nearly fucking cry each time because you feel so sorry for him, even though he's been an antagonist the whole season.
I've always been captivated by the moment where Melchett calls him Kevin.
Yeah, that's when he gets a name. Yeah, like...
Yeah. I noticed that his name Kevin was in the credits of previous episodes, but that's the only time it's spoken.
Yeah, and it's given weight. And, like, that's the thing. Like, Darling is a silly little character who's basically a mirror of Blackadder, and he is a joke character whose joke is his own name. But you nearly want to fucking cry. Like, you either do or you want to cry about what happens to him at the end. Because you do relate to him. Like, although Darling has been this antagonistic character, wouldn't you want to be Darling? Like, wouldn't you want that? That's what Blackadder wants. Other than getting out of
the position he has, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, and then, he gets that taken away from him, and it's tragic because he hasn't done anything wrong to get it taken away. It's just a situation.
In this viewing, I was really kind of captivated by the opening credits sequence where they're all marching and stuff. Like you were saying, they're relatable. I feel like in the opening credits, I was getting the sense of like we're seeing them now at work, and then when the episode starts, it's more like they're not at work. Like you have this relatability where like Blackadder's not working. He's just speaking his mind, and his not friends, but Baldric and Georgia, responding to him. But then when you see Melchett, it still feels like he's doing the same thing as in the opening credits. Like he's still being important and at work, and Darling is still, behind him, as support. Like I just, there was some sort of compelling thing comparing how they are in the opening to how they are in the episodes for me this time round.
And I think see how we're now talking about this 4th season? That's the power of it. We're talking about it in a far more critical, analytical sense, because this 4th season has so many funny gags, so many wacky characters, sure, but it's also delivering this really nuanced writing, this really grounded, impactful writing in amongst knob gags and darling and all that. It's a show, the 4th season, it's not just the last episode. There are many moments throughout this whole season in which you feel incredibly sad at what's happening to the characters. The last episode is the culmination of all that, and it's possibly the best episode of the whole entire show, like in terms of quality. I think my favorite is Bells, but I think Goodbye is the best episode of Blackadder. Just you can watch it on its own, in isolation. It's that good because it just, even though it's the final episode, like it's just masterstroke of everything.
I always think of the ending of that, but rewatching that last episode, this time round, the whole thing, just like the poignant things all throughout it, that just captivated me.
I mean, just because we're talking about Goodbye for the time being, a shot that always sticks with me. Like Blackadder, like you said, it's a sitcom. The first season has these intricate camera works and locations, but a shot that will always stick with me is when Darling is told the information and he's on his knees, and they're like, and the driver's here, and you see the door open up, and it's just this shadow, like this bright light from the car or whatever it is, and the shadow of the man, the driver, just dominating over Darling on his knees, and it just sticks with me because it's just so fucking haunting, because you just know from that image he would be taken there even against his will. He goes, accordingly, but you just know that it's just that image.
And it
striking.
contrasts like General Melchett in like his bathrobe and like speaking kindly like a father to him. I think that's also the shot where he calls him Kevin, right?
Yes, and
it's
just striking visually, because we don't get that very often in this show. That striking lighting, and it's impactful. I don't have a favorite episode in season 4. It's hard. That Goodbye episode is probably the best, but a favorite is just too hard to pick them because they all run into one another perfectly.
That's true, but there is one that we like to quote a lot, don't we?
Which one?
And I think we even did it in like the last episode that we recorded as of this recording, the Speckled Jim episode.
Speckled Jim. You want to talk about Speckled Jim? Because I think, when I think of you, I think this is one of your favorite, if not favorite, episodes of the whole entire show.
It does have one very, very good physical comedy gag for me with General Melchett, yes.
Which is?
The plot of this episode is that through Blackadder's I guess assholishness, through his dickishness, his desire to not go over the top and follow orders. This is the episode where he doesn't follow orders. They send him a carrier pigeon, and they mention that the shooting of carrier pigeons is now a court-martial offense, but he doesn't know that until he's already shot the carrier pigeon, which happens to be General Melchett's, like childhood pet that he dearly loves. So the whole episode is basically General Melchett in full antagonist mode, trying to get Blackadder to the firing squad. And this includes a kangaroo court trial in which everything goes wrong for Blackadder, including the fact that the judge is General Melchett, the living victim in a way, the widower of the actual victim.
Speckled Jim.
And he switches between modes of being the grieving victim, the grieving widower, and the judge who's prim proper, that also is completely biased against the defendant. And this includes a point where Darling
Yeah.
calls him as a witness, and he's in the full grieving mode, pointing out everything wrong that Blackadder did, and then the final question being like, can you see him in this courtroom? And he looks to his left, he looks to his right, he looks forward, sees Blackadder, kind of reacts, points at him, and just yells like, there he is, there he is.
There he
And
is,
just
the
that little
pigeon
moment-
shooter.
Yes, and that moment of him being asked to point out Blackadder is one of my favorites.
I love it. Stephen Fry is an interesting guy, in real life and as a performer. He is an intellectual. He's a fascinating guy. Most people now of our generation may know him as the host of QI, or just as Stephen Fry is a personality. He's a brand of his own. Many might know him as the voice of that Harry Potter audio book. But for me, he'll always be General Melchett. I think
Yeah, same.
this is his greatest performance in his entire career. I think this is the peak of his comedy brilliance. And even when you watch QI, every now and then a conversation will come up and he'll do the bah, and you hear the audience just cheer. Because even just him doing that, the recognition that he played that character is enough to sustain. And General Melchett is one of the greatest comedy antagonists ever, to the point in which, rewatching it, there were so many things that I had forgotten because other things in my brain overshadowed it. Like, I always remember the killing of his pet bunny rabbit Flossie speech, but I forgot about the poo-pooing a poo-poo speech. Because it's everything he does, the him falling in love with Georgina, and darling, the best darling line to me is, stop slouching, darling. That's when he's unconscious across the desk. That's my favorite use of darling. He just says it so nonchalantly. Stop slouching, darling. And I think General Melchett is, like, he's the same age as them, but you do not think in your brain for a single moment that General Melchett isn't some guy in his late 50s. In my brain, I don't look at him and think, oh, that's a 29-year-old man. I think
when
of
you
him
first
as, like,
told me that.
like, either he's in his late 20s or early to mid-30s, but, like, you don't look at him and go, oh, yeah, that's a guy that's only a few years older than myself in real life. And you look at him and go, oh, he's like a 58-year-old man, right?
Yeah. He just delivers it.
Do you have a favorite, other than that moment, do you have other favorite Melchett moment? Because he has so many.
In your own words, he does have so many. Physical lines, like in the first person shot that you talked about a while ago, like
Him behind the map.
and just giving that like goofy stare.
He's doing a duck face.
And I remembered it too, but when I saw it, it was
That's a gag you would do. Like, if we did a show, that's something your character would do.
yeah. In when I was in year 12, I did have for year 12 drama, both of the units actually I had a Blackadder 4 reference. Like in the first unit, which was an ensemble performance, I had the villain main character have a reveal at the end that his name was Kevin to try to humanize him. But then for the second unit, I had to do a solo performance as the fourth rendition of Baldric, and there was a point where we had to show a representation of the people in charge, and I probably didn't do it well, but I did have a moment where I had to say a line as General Melchett, and I remember that was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
I got to do a little bah to, Victorian education examines.
Nice. He has so many. I think one of the master strokes of season 4 as well is Darling. Darling, I mean, it's not Percy. It's the same actor, but different character. And I think just him being called Darling is genius. Because not only is every time they say Darling very funny and it has a different connotation each time they say it, and there's an innuendo built into it, you can tell that that's a character who has suffered being called his own name. I've never really seen a character whose personal tragedy in this way, like their own name, every time their name is said, it's like a dagger in their hearts.
I think from the very first moment, like when I think it was Blackadder, just like hello, darling, and just this little stare he gives him, and then a very quick and stern, it's Captain Darling, Blackadder. Just that moment.
And his eye twitch that the actor had to get physiotherapy to get rid of.
Just that moment, character established.
My favorite Darling moment, I don't know why, because he has a very snivelly voice. Like he said, I have a favorite moment when he's showing the map of how much territory they've captured, and it's a 1-to-1.
Oh, the model.
The model replica, and it's a 1-to-1, and he goes, "It's very lifelike. Look, there's a little worm."
A little worm.
I don't know why his line delivery of that cracks me. It just makes me burst into laughter every time. Look, there's a little worm, and we can't see the worm, but you in your brain can see it because the way he points at it and the way he says it. I'm just imagining a little worm wiggling about in front of him.
Yeah, and if we did see it, we'd know, like, oh yes, so that's the size of the land that we captured. It's comparable to a worm.
It's season 4. I mean, we've got to talk about Flash. He comes back. How do you feel? Which version of Flash do you prefer?
I think I prefer the 4th one just because I remember it a bit less, so it's more fresh.
And he's sexy. Sexier. He's even sexier. Like, Rick Mail described his characterization as Flash in season 4 as, like, he's got that outfit that is pure sex. And he described it like, I was a giant living penis. Like, that's how sex I was. And he is. He's pure sex in this. I like season 4 as well. I think season 2 will just have that thing in my brain because we're introduced to him, and it's in one scene. But season 4 he has all the great lines as well. I think a personal favorite of mine is when he starts to show a different characterization, like he's deeper than Edmund gave him credit for about the war, and like he doesn't like the war either, and I love that. And then, really? Why, of course not. Now you get through that door before I give it a new interesting color called Hint of Brain.
There's also a weird thing of, like, in the episode right before that, we get introduced to the second Bob. And she's, like, kind of built up as, like, oh, she's going to be a new character. But then in the next episode, as soon as she enters the room with Lord Flashheart, she's just gone.
She's gone. Bobby Parkhurst.
He has the power to get rid of a newly established character.
Yeah, well, he did that last time. I like it's like they're fated to be together each time.
Yeah.
Flash is the best. The British do a really interesting job in TV shows like this and Red Dwarf and a few others I can think of. They have characters that in the universe of the show are bigger than life and are awesome. But to the main character, they're obnoxious and they're annoying. And in turn to us, they're obnoxious and annoying is supposed to be the thing. But in reality, we find them genuinely awesome and wonderful and bigger than life. Flashheart we know is obnoxious, but when you think of him, one of the words you have to say to yourself is, he's awesome. And
I do like also that the 4th season has Blackadder not liking him because they were chums in the 2nd season.
Yes.
Apparently.
But season 4, yeah, they're adversarial, and he has the best Blackadder line about Blackadder, old slack bladder.
Well, that was in the Christmas special as well, wasn't it? And that's before 4th season?
Oh no, but Rick Mail says it was such greatness.
Are you saying that young child actor didn't do it better?
Yeah. No, I think he just calls him Mr. Bladder, but he calls him...
I swear he said slack bladder.
Play the audio, Ryan.
Merry Christmas Eve, Mr. Slapladder. I mean Blackadder.
And also, he has the second best Darling line. The 2 Darling lines are in the same scene, by the way, that I consider to be the best, which is, Darling? That's an odd name for a man. The last person I called Darling was pregnant 20 seconds later.
Yep, I remember that.
And he headbutts him. I love that whole... Rick Mail has this really great... he had this really great inflection in his lines, and I love... when you notice it, in the show, you can tell that the script has really long sentences for the actors to say, so they have to machine gun the way they're through the lines to get the rhythm of it right. Like, Rick Mail does it very well. Rowan Atkinson has the, this is stickier than a stick insect caught in a sticky situation, that kind of thing. They have to machine gun through their lines. You can tell that the sentence is very long, and Rick Mail has that ability to do that, and he has a different to Rowan Atkinson. Rowan Atkinson, he has this weird enunciation on things like Bob, because he has a speech impediment and a stammer. Rick Mail hears it, and I just love there's that line, that whole monologue where he's just looking at Darling and he's like, but, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then just headbutts him. Season 4. I think it is the most emotionally resonant, and season 4 just ends so perfectly when it's them just going out of the trenches, over the top, and you see the machine gun fired down, and it just transitions to the red poppies, and it's just like, it's so weird that a stupid British comedy show has one of the most impactful statements about a world war.
Yeah.
Like, you can see why that episode is used as something to be educational as for World War One, or why it has such an esteem, because the First World War was comedically absurd, but also very tragic in reality, and that's this 4th season in a nutshell. It's comedic and absurd, but it's also very tragic and sad.
Yeah, you get a real sense of like what the propaganda was at the time, especially with George in that final episode when he talks about his friends. And he's just too dim-witted to realize, like exactly what he's saying. And even when he, in that final episode, when he talks to Baldrick and tells him off and you don't know what you're talking about, there is a comedy element of George also doesn't know what he's talking about, but it's also, I found it also very sad because it's like he's fallen for the propaganda in that when he chastises Baldrick.
But too that he knows that Baldrick's right, but the reflex is to reinstate the normality of the situation. So Baldrick speaking all these harsh things, it's rattling George, and George doesn't want to be rattled, so he's like, shut up. Because it's like that moment where George is finally waking up to the seriousness of the situation, and he has to go back to being oblivious, and being ignorant is bliss, Bartek.
Yeah, I don't know if he realizes it at that point, or if he's just he's still computing in his head is the thing that got for me. Definitely at the end when
he says he's afraid.
When he says a jolly line and then he's like, "Sir, I'm scared, sir." At that point, I think he really gets it.
I don't want to die. I love, don't forget your stick, George. Oh yes, I wouldn't want to go out there without my this. And one of the most tragic comedic lines of all time is from Darling at the very end, where they're like, "We made it. We finally did it. They got around the table and all that, and the Great War of 1914
to 1917,
and it's such a bittersweet zinger. It is. You just go, oh no.
Blackadder's last line also. Yeah, it's like whatever it was, the cunning plan thing. Whatever it was better than anything I came up with. Who would have noticed another madman in this war or something?
Yeah, around here. Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you looked up any behind the scenes things, but the final that was pure editing genius, because they only did them running above the trenches once, because it was terrifying, because it was in pure darkness, and the explosions were the light, and it was all terrifying, and it was only a short space for them to run and die in front of, and Rowan Atkinson and the other actors we're not doing that again. So they had to make up for that in editing. And
yeah, I didn't watch it now, but I think years ago I watched the 2 documentaries you were telling me about. Don't you see it in real time in one of the documentaries?
Yeah, and it's very weird and not very good. But they slow it down. They got the music and then the slow transitions and the war field, and it's sad. The series though has a legacy. We have the 2 specials. I don't really have much to say about them. They're fine. The Christmas one's better, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's okay. I think the big thing about the Christmas one is I'm far more interested in the present day story and characters than going back and forwards, but that's the point of the Christmas special.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the specials?
I really like the Christmas one. Definitely, it did feel a bit odd that the kindest man, Ebenezer Blackadder, did still have some dickish lines going for him.
Mm.
But they felt a bit more like good natured. Like when he points out that the orphans are fat, it's not as like a mean thing. It's like, oh goodness, they are fat, I guess.
He's being honest.
Yeah. I'd forgotten all about the future segment though, and I found myself laughing quite a bit at
I like that Nursey's in that segment just in the background, and she has like a line. That's about it, and she's like in a
An
giant metal
ashtray.
case.
And I guess she's meant to be the third husbandoid.
Yeah, that's why they're husbandoid.
I really like Hugh Laurie in that future segment, though.
His American accent was not yet
His
perfected.
American accent.
Most people now don't realize that he's British. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I mean, technically, the first thing I saw him in was Stuart Little, and I know you forget, but yeah, he did have an American accent in that, so that.
But he
kinda
looks
surprised
British
me.
in it, right?
I'd have to rewatch. I haven't
Get a
rewatched
still
that
image of
since-
him and just go, tell me that's not a British man. Tell me to my face. I don't know, the Christmas
Yeah.
special, I think the funnier stuff is in the present day stuff. When they have the flashback to season 2 and season 3 and the future, they're nice. It's nice to revisit those places or visit them for the first time, but they're not as funny as, to me, him interacting with those bad influences in his current day life, like his goddaughter
Yeah.
or Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. I think that's the thing that really bugs me is I would watch a whole show about that Blackadder, whether it's the same stick or not, but I think casting the Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, those two, I think they would have been great as a whole series-long thing. Jim...
Yeah, I think, I guess
Go
all
on.
we see is like setups and then a bunch of stuff in the middle, and then at the end just payoffs to everything we set up.
And it's a special. It doesn't have to do much else other than that. I think Robbie Coltrane's a little bit wasted. I remembered him being funnier, but he's okay. Like, he doesn't get much to do.
Yeah.
He has his woo thing, and he likes drinking. And you could tell that J.K. Rowling was watching that special when she was thinking about the character of Hagrid.
Yes.
Because we know that she wrote it with him in mind. But he looks exactly like Hagrid in this special.
What if J.K. Rowling comes out and it's like, no, it was the guy that made the dictionary that sold
Ah,
them.
yes. The Christmas special does have some great zingers. Like, I think my favorite bit was his Christmas present to Baldric at the end, which was a fist. I think that's my favorite of him being cruel to Baldric jokes, actually. Like that, it's a fist, and it's great, and you keep punching him, it's good. And I don't know, when I think of him being cruel to Baldric, that's like top tier. Even though I don't think the Christmas special is as good as the series, nor should it be, but it's still pretty great. Piggy Wiggy Wiggy Woo, Piggy Wiggy Woo. that was also great. It was fine. Like, I think Prince Albert and Queen Victoria are the standouts. I love the running gag with him. Damn. And he falls into her giant breasts to comfort himself.
Yeah.
And I like that she's nice. Like, we think of Queen Victoria as like a hard ass and a mean bitch, or like very cold. And her version of Queen Victoria is not just Lady Whiteadder, and it's not just a Spanish infanto. Like, she's like this wonderful, nice person. Like,
Who wants to reward nice people?
yeah, she's very upbeat and nice, which you don't think of. And not even for Miriam Margolyes. Like, I've seen her play upbeat people before, but I don't know. You think that she would play it more like a Whiteadder, right? But no, she's very, like, jovial and happy and, like, ooh. And I like their dynamic as this happy, like, it feels like they're still newlyweds with just how, like, excited they are by each other. It's very fun. And Jim Broadbent, he's one of those actors that, I've said it before, he's in everything and he's always different, but you always remember, hey, it's Jim Broadbent. And like I said with other people, when I see Jim Broadbent, I'll always think of him in Blackadder. That's like the immediate thing will come up in my brain. I'm like, oh, it's Silencio, or damn. No matter how good he is, I will always think of him as these things.
Yeah, you were always building up those two in the Christmas special, so definitely that was something that I was looking forward to seeing, and they delivered.
They did deliver. And then we end the turbulent ride of Blackadder, the whole affair of it, there's no more of it after Back and Forth, and Back and Forth is easily the worst thing in the whole entire run, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not awful, but it's definitely the weakest. Yeah.
I think it's just not very funny, is the thing. Could you tell me a bit that you found very funny or funny? Because I didn't laugh really. There was nothing really popped out. I mean, Rick Mail as Robin Hood was good. That was about it.
There was something, but I can't remember what it is. So I guess that speaks to its quality.
Yeah, no, Rick Mail as Robin Hood, and the gag was when they came back and saved him, and he's like reenacting the scene again. It's like, but my question is, why are you so great? And Rick Mail's like, whoa, let me tell you. And that was the thing I found amusing. I found it amusing that Flashheart is Robin Hood, basically. And that was it. I don't know. I think it's missing a lot of the key elements. One, it has a production value, like it's a film, even though it's like 30 minutes long.
It's like a short film.
It's got lavish sets, it's got higher quality camera, but it's missing the live audience reaction. And the gags aren't paced very well. You just feel the silences. Like when Baldrick comes out in the special for the first time.
Yeah, and he's wearing the, like, front of a maid outfit.
I didn't laugh. It was just silence, and it was very weird. And
yeah,
as great a comedic titans as they all are, I feel like all of them, except for maybe Tony Robertson as Baldrick, didn't really get the characterizations down pat, you know? Like Stephen Fry, I don't know what the fuck he was doing in this. I don't know what he was trying to do, but it just didn't work. It felt very hammy. Which is very weird to say about Blackadder, because he was very hammy in the World War I episodes, but it matched. But in this, I don't know what he was going for.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I liked it more when I was younger, but yeah, I think of it more as just like, oh, it's a turn of the Millennium special than a real, like, conclusion to the franchise.
No, I agree. It is just a throwaway special, and you don't need to watch it. But just think about it. This is the last entry in Blackadder. And it's, I'd rather Goodbye be the last entry than...
Well, and that's the reason why they didn't have a follow-up season, right? Because the fourth season ended so strongly.
Yeah, that and the writers were tired. The fourth season, if you watch the behind-the-scenes stuff, is really tiring, like, because the actors also helped go over the script, and it was very, like, meticulous and very tough. But it was better for it. That's the question. There's always been rumors of another season of Blackadder will happen. We've heard pitches of what other time periods. Like, I've heard that they want to do one in the 60s or 70s where he's in charge of a punk band or something. Would you ever want another season of this?
I remember reading that, like, forever ago, and I couldn't remember if that was something I made up or if I actually read it, but I guess you just confirmed it. I think when I was younger, I was like, oh, more Blackadder, I would have liked that. But now... yeah, I don't know.
I think it just needs to be left as it is. You know, it's perfect. Leave it as it is. I feel like coming back to it would be difficult to do now. I think.
Oh, at this point, yeah.
But Mr. Bean always comes back and goes, and that's fine because Mr. Bean's like a silly physical comedy thing, and Rowan Atkinson's still got the chops. But I think like the writers. Not saying that they aren't at their A game nowadays, but I don't know. It just like it felt like it was a thing of its time, and it needs to be left alone.
Yeah.
Can you imagine an American version of Blackadder?
No.
No, I don't want to, but it'd be fucking terrible. The Americans don't get it sometimes when they try to do their version of British things, like the Red Dwarf pilot or the IT Crowd pilot. Is just like they don't get it, do they?
I'd like to see the British making their version of what the American version would look like.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
And Hugh Laurie can use his American accent.
yeah. He's. Anything else you want to say about old Blackadder? Final thoughts?
I think I gave all my super poignant great thoughts already. I had a really good time revisiting it. There are a lot of episodes where I maybe not necessarily knew what line was coming up, but I knew like the gist of what was going to happen next, and that felt like really nice and familiar. But then there are also, I think almost every season had at least one or two long sequences that I completely forgot about. So that was a nice kind of fresh feeling. It's just a really fun show. Really recommend checking it out.
Yeah, it's same here. It's a classic of British comedy. I think if you are wanting to get into the style of comedy that Britain has to offer, Blackadder is an easy entry for that. It's cynical, it's very clever, it's smartly written. It's not too British for you to be hard to get into it. I think it's a great entry point, and I think it is just one of the classics. For me, I grew up with Blackadder, Black Books, Coupling, and so on and so forth. There's so many like classic British ones that I just point to. And Red Dwarf, and Blackadder will always be still relevant and still in my brain because of just how well written and well performed it is. Like I've said, you got all these great interpretations of characters, great comedy performances, all these comedic titans in the same area and same room working together, working against each other if you're Rick Mayall. And it is interesting. Also, it's just fun to learn about history things. Like I know it's not like historically accurate either, but like it is interesting as a little history thing.
You'll get more out of it if you know the history, which that's above me, but you know, the few things I did notice, that was cool.
Yeah, Blackadder, perfect show overall. But Bartek, I've got to ask you a question before we wrap this up.
Was it speckly? What's the question?
Right breasty dumpling or left breasty dumpling?
Well, of course, it's both breasty dumplings.
Nursey milk?
Or moo cow milk.
Moo cow milk.
Well, of course, it's
He had such a brilliant idea that his foot fell off. Oh, we could sit here quoting Blackadder till the end of time. It's that good. That's the thing, too. It's such a quotable show. Quotable.
It is. I think that's most of like what we were talking about over the years, because one of the big things with Blackadder, even though I'd seen it so much, is I don't think I watched it at all in the last... No, that's not true. Year 12.
Yeah.
But basically, since meeting you, I hadn't watched it, even though we were talking about it all the time.
And I would give you things like, oh, you remember that bit? And you're like, oh, yeah, or no, I've forgotten that, or like, yeah, wonderful. Yeah, that's it, listening people. Discussion of Blackadder, done and dusted. You can follow us on the social medias, Facebook and Twitter. Spin Polish Presents, find us pretty easy. All the podcatchers, rate us, review us on whatever ones allow it. Spit and Polish Presents. You will find us. We've got a YouTube, so on and so forth, all that jargon. Our email is spitandpolished@gmail.com if you want to email us with your views on things, your thoughts, compliments, death threats, suggestions for our weekly show, all that amazing stuff. Bartek, what final words of wisdom do you want to impart upon our listeners to end this all on?
Wobble.